Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to Broadland District Council Appeals Panel meeting, the 20th of November 2020. The appeal we will consider today is Tree Preservation Order 2020 number 5, 66 Charles Close, Wroxham. Before we proceed with the hearing today, I need to advise all in attendance that this is a public meeting and is being live streamed on Broadland District Council's YouTube channel. I would like you to please follow the general etiquette of remote meetings. Please ensure your microphones are on mute to avoid background noise, and please unmute yourselves when you wish to speak. Please raise a hand to the screen to indicate to myself or our host if you should wish to speak. Our host will advise me if I should miss your gesture to speak, and I will come to you in turn. If I can introduce myself and the officers on the panel. I am Councillor Sue Lorne, chairperson of this panel, and the colleagues with me today are Councillor Protton and Councillor Lawrence. Our officers in attendance today is Officer Matthews and Officer Rockford. Please be advised that the hearing today will follow the procedures as stated in the agenda, but it has been adapted to meet the particular needs of this case, being mindful of the unavoidable and changing restrictions imposed by COVID-19 on this online Zoom meeting today. Has anybody got any questions before we proceed? No, thank you. We'll now proceed with our agenda. Agenda item number 1 is to receive declarations of interest. Officer Matthews, do you need?
I'm not aware of any declarations, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. And agenda item number 2, apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chairman. Everyone's present.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is to confirm the minutes of the last meeting held on the 20th of January 2020. The only member in attendance who can confirm these minutes is Councillor Prutton. Councillor Prutton, could I please ask you to check for accuracy and matters arising from the minutes of the previous meeting? Thank you.
They are, as far as I can remember back to January, a true and accurate representation of what happened on that day.
Wonderful, thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, Broadland District Tree Preservation Order number 2020, number 5, and 66 Charles Close, Wroxham. Today we will determine whether or not to confirm the order having regard to the representation received from Mr. and Mrs. Page. As previously stated, we will now follow the protocol in our papers and adapt them for this particular meeting. Procedure 1, the site visit. Due to present COVID restrictions, we've been unable to hold the site visit as our normal practice. However, the panel have viewed the trees by way of photographs, both online in our agenda papers, and each member has had a drive past and has seen the tree from a social distance view. Procedure 2, the hearing. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, we are unable to hold this hearing in council offices, so we are assembled remotely. We will move to point 2.1 and number 3. The objector will normally be asked to present their case in this situation. Our objectors are unable to be with us remotely this morning and have indicated their agreement that the hearing should proceed under the circumstances in their absence. The objectors have submitted their objection, which the panel have already seen in the agenda papers, and they've been sent a copy of the agenda papers. Number 4, the objectors have submitted a response to the officer's case, and I will now ask Officer Matthews to read the objector's response. Thank you, Officer Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the response that the objectors have submitted following receipt of the agenda papers. So this is their case they would have presented if they'd have been here themselves. We would like to make the additional comments set out relating to correspondence. For ease of reading, these comments will be in the order as set out in the correspondence, and we kindly ask if you would bring these comments to the attention of the Appeals Committee. Page 15 refers to the canopy having potential to provide nesting sites for many species of garden birds. We have lived at this property for 17 years and not once observed a nest of any description. We are keen wildlife supporters, have been members of the Norfolk Wildlife Trust for many years, and have several bird boxes in our rear garden where birds do nest in our trees, holly, pyrantha and boxes. We actually placed a woodpecker nesting box in the Atlas cedar several years ago to encourage nesting, but this did not happen. We feel that this is because of the open aspect of the foliage of the tree is not conducive to nesting. Page 16. The tree officer states that during his recent site visit to photograph the tree from the public footpath, approximately 8 metres away, he could not identify any significant structural defects. It is regrettable that he did not let us know of his intention to do this, as he had viewed the tree as if he had viewed the tree from a northerly aspect, which is not in any of the photographs, he would clearly have seen bark shedding on the side of a large branch and evidence of at least 2 fairly large diameter branches that have jagged edges from where they have broken off. We would have been happy to meet with him. Indeed, we asked to do this in our original letter. The last paragraph of our letter dated 2nd of June states, "May we therefore ask if you would arrange for a council member to telephone us when we could arrange to have some dialogue and we could give him the opportunity to discuss our concerns." Social distancing would obviously have taken place. In essence, therefore, we don't feel that the tree preservation officer has viewed the tree in a way that enables him to state his findings in a satisfactory way. Page 17 refers in its first line to the observation of, quotes, some dead wood, quotes, off, within the tree canopy that appear to be mostly tertiary branches. Again, we wish to emphasise that we feel the tree officer would have seen more evidence had he viewed the tree more closely. The second paragraph of page 17 says about our concerns concerning the tree failing and being blown over. We wish to point out that in no correspondence have we actually said that. We have only stated in our original letter dated the 2nd of June and subsequent email to the tree officer about this meeting's attendance, that it is the top of the tree that we are concerned about breaking off. We consider the tree officer's statistical details in paragraph 3 and 4 of page 17, therefore to be totally irrelevant. In paragraph 6 on page 17, the tree officer refers to a section of the upper canopy lost in the garden of number 48 The Avenue in Storm Doris of the same species of tree. We would ask if he actually viewed that section, as we think he only saw the remaining part of the tree when he was approached in April 2018 by new owners of the property, Mr. Carl Unsworth, to have the remainder of the tree felled. We think this because we knew the very elderly man who subsequently had to pay for the damage to our garden and obviously arranged to clear the debris of the tree in his garden, and he and us estimated this to be about 20 feet, not just a section of the upper canopy. Sadly, the man referred to has since died. In paragraph 10 on page 17, the tree officer states that in his opinion, the tree has a compact form and the canopy doesn't appear excessively unbalanced. He then refers to remedial pruning to reshape the canopy in the future. Surely this is a contradiction. How far in the future is he thinking about? In the last paragraph on page 17, it is stated that Atlas cedars are widely planted as decorative ornamental garden and parkland trees. We don't consider this to be a decorative ornamental tree, now that it is 52 feet by 42 feet as measured by the tree officer. And as written in our original letter of the 2nd of June, this area did used to be parkland, and this area did used to be parkland when the tree was planted, but is now residential. In paragraph 2 on page 18, it states that the tree within the front lawn will constrain the type of plants grown due to shade, brackets a 42-foot canopy, and the water intake of the tree. This emphasises our comments that we find our front garden very difficult to manage. The tree officer's conclusion states that the tree should have a remaining lifespan exceeding 10 years. May we therefore draw attention to the statement at the top of the photograph taken by Piers Ransom, the professional agent we approached initially, page 35, that the damaged parts and, more importantly, his referral to dieback totally contradicts this. In conclusion, and referring to page 18, we accept the tree officer's expertise about the importance of future-proofing our tree populations. And whilst we have stated in both our original letter and subsequent email that we would be happy to replace the tree, we would be pleased to do this with a non-native species. The only criteria we would ask for is size and less dependency on water. Yours sincerely, Christine and Desmond Page. That concludes their presentation, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Officer Matthews. Now, we would then move on to protocol number 5, and there would be some cross-questioning of the residents with that response, but obviously circumstances that's not possible for us to do that. So I just need to ask the members of the panel if you should have any questions which would significantly prevent the deliberation of this case. We can adjourn the meeting and attempt to contact the objectors by telephone and address any questions or concerns of the members. Members, can I ask, should you need any further clarification from the objectors? So could you just unmute yourself, please, and just advise me if you...
I beg your pardon. I cannot think that they could add anything to what they've already written.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cotton. Councillor Lawrence?
No, I think it's their response has been quite extensive and robust, so thank them for that.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And well, that takes us on to number 6, procedure number 6. And I will now ask the Council's advocate to introduce the case for making this order. Officer Mark Simmons. Mark, can I just advise you that we won't need you to screen share this morning? Is that okay with you? If you could just do your verbal presentation for us, please.
Yes, sure. The only items I had that I thought might be helpful were colour photographs I'd taken of the tree at the subsequent site visit, and also the street view images, but I wasn't aware you were visiting the site. So
no, and I totally appreciate that. I think it was something that the panel decided. We all went individually, so we didn't go together as a group. It was individually, and I think it just happened that we felt that was the right thing to do. So, if I can just explain my reasoning for saying that we're not going to screen share the photographs in any part of this meeting unless it's absolutely necessary, is because this is going out on YouTube, as we all know, and on the data protection, I think that it just wouldn't be acceptable to be showing those on YouTube at the moment. But as we've said, the members have got access to them. Okay, so thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, could I just quickly reassure Mark that you referred to the colour photographs. I think the gender papers that members have had, if I'm right, I think they did have colour photographs of, so the agenda papers that members had included colour reproductions of those photographs. So they have seen both on site, they've seen the trees, and they've got the colour photographs in front of them now.
It's like I didn't realise it did that. So if you could just please put your case for the order. Thank you.
Certainly, yes. Yeah. The reason the council made the provisional tree preservation order was due to receipt of a Section 211 notification for works within a conservation area. The tree's located within the Wroxham Conservation Area, so that process is required. All the council can do is have no objection or make a tree preservation order if the criteria that we use, the 5 points, and obviously following the requirements of the Town and Country Planning Act, are seen to have been met. In this case, it was my opinion that the tree did have significant visual amenity and was worthy of protection with a TPO. There's a lot of additional points that have been raised by Mr. and Mrs. Page. I haven't had any time to sort of respond to all those. It's sort of now at short notice, but I'll do what I can to address the points that have been made. I think you've had the opportunity to view the tree. I think whether you consider it's got visual amenity will be a personal matter for the members on the panel. I think the species is a tree that is widely planted in gardens, and there are neighbouring gardens, as we know, that have similar cedars. The one in the background that's shown in the photographs I'd taken is actually a deodar cedar. I think that's in the garden that's mentioned in Mr. and Mrs. Page's letter. It isn't the tree that failed, but it's another species of cedar, and I think it's shown quite well as a contrast to the tree that we're considering. With regard to the site visit and meetings, at the time we received the notification, we were in lockdown and no site meeting protocols had been agreed or established by the council. So no site meeting was undertaken at that point. We did have correspondence with the applicant's agent, Mr. Piers Ranson, and as the agent, we normally correspond with them as they're acting on behalf of the applicant. And correspondence did take place with Mr. Ranson via phone calls to establish, additional information. Having looked at the tree recently at the site visit I did, whilst I didn't look at the tree from the northern side, having inspected trees for approaching 36 years now, there was nothing that got any alarm bells ringing with me with regards to its structural integrity. There is dead wood, and I think I've agreed you can see dead wood within the canopy. Certainly the comments I made in my report regarding future management, the tree has the potential to grow considerably. It's a species that in its native environment can reach 40 meters. So, at the moment, it's half the size it could potentially be, although they never attain the full size in the UK because we don't have the climate that is similar to North Africa. But it is a species that's well suited to our warming climate, and I think that was one of the reasons I gave to justify that it may not be native, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. I think with regards to the use of the front garden, if you've driven past and had a look, you'll see that there are low branches. You get the seasonal nuisance of leaf fall, needle fall, and there will be some competition with other plants for moisture. That's a trade-off of having a large tree, in a garden. You can't have full sun and expect no competition when you're growing tree species. It will be a decision for the members, to decide whether that is an overriding factor of why they justify the removal of the tree. My opinion is that whilst it would undoubtedly cause some inconvenience, it wouldn't be a valid reason to remove it, because the other benefits it provides, in my opinion, are significant. I haven't taken a full list of points raised by the additional points raised by Mr. and Mrs. Page. Could I just refer to Dawn to see if there is anything additional that I ought to address?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Let's have a quick. Nesting birds was a comment they made.
Oh yes, yeah. The comment regarding nesting birds is it doesn't really apply, for this point in time. It's more a thought on as the tree matures, they produce larger canopies, larger branches that are more suitable for birds that nest in cavities or hollows. I think the Woodland Trust notes that as these trees age, that they do produce nesting sites for a whole variety of native species of birds. So I don't think just because there hasn't been a nest observed in recent years that it would never occur. We have to look to the future as well.
Thank you, Mark. I think you've addressed the issue of your visual interpretation of the site. You're satisfied that you've seen the tree from all angles. So that covers their comments in page 16. They refer to deadwood, and obviously you're very aware of the deadwood. The tree falling, I think they seem concerned that they'd referred to concern about the tree failing, but they'd only actually referred to small elements of the tree failing. That was one of their concerns, was small elements of the tree may fail, and I think they've suffered failing before and a consequence to that failing.
Yes, I think I've acknowledged in my comments that the tree species does shed branches, and this can be particularly during events when there's heavy snow. You know, I can't dispute that. If I have referred to it failing at the base and have misinterpreted that particular comment, then I'm sorry. I was just sort of referring to if the tree was to fail at the base and the likelihood of that happening.
I think the other comment is they disagree. You mentioned that you felt the tree had a compact form, but then you talk about remedial pruning to reshape it, and I felt there was a contradiction there.
Yeah, again, that isn't for the present moment in time. It's just a reference that in the future, if as the tree grows, and it will continue to grow, if remedial pruning was required to rebalance the crown in the future, then it's likely we would consent that works as long as it followed, you know, the recognised best practice.
I think they then went on to refer to the fact that this is a decorative ornamental tree that was once in a parkland but now a residential area, and is therefore, considering its size now, is inappropriate for the location.
Yeah, I think I've sort of covered that. You know, it's a commonly planted species of tree within conservation areas and gardens throughout Broadland. And whilst they are a tree that was widely planted as sort of standalone specimen trees in large parkland landscapes, you know, the likes of Capability Brown was very often including them in planting schemes. I think it does fit within the landscape of the conservation area in Wroxham. They're quite large gardens, and I think this one is approximately 14 metres from the property. So I don't think at this point in time there's a major conflict between the property and the location of the tree. It is a feature of the conservation area in Wroxham that there are many trees of different ornamental species, and you know, that's what makes, or part of what makes it special.
I think you've covered most of the points then, Mark. They refer to the lifespan, but I think you've demonstrated to the committee that you feel it's got a lifespan exceeding 10 years. The only other in conclusion, they state they were happy to replace the tree with an alternative specimen. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that.
Yes, yeah, this is something that we often have in these situations, and offered to plant a tree, which in my opinion, in this case, you would be removing something that is significant in the landscape already, and to remove it and then just plant another one that will take another 30 years to get to the size that this particular tree is, doesn't make a lot of practical sense in my opinion. We have a tree that's healthy and is already providing the visual amenity benefits, and I don't think you know, and unless the tree is considered by the members not to be suitable for protection and it is removed, then I would welcome something going back in its place.
Okay, I think that covers the questions from the residents. So thank you for that, Mark. Thank you for your presentation this morning. And again, as I said previously, in relation to the objectives, we will not be cross-questioning you as a panel. And but I should just ask any members if there is any questions that would significantly prevent the deliberation of the case. We will accept questions at this time. Members, can I ask you, should you need any further clarification from the officer? If you could just unmute yourself. Councillor Plotton?
Mark, in your experience,
Sorry, Councillor Plotton, just bear with me just a second. Because of the situation and fairness to the applicants, are these the questions which are really significant and would stop you from deliberating on this application?
it would add to my knowledge of the situation in the 17 years since Mr. and Mrs. Page have lived there.
Sir Matthews, an officer of Mockford, is this an acceptable process?
I think you could ask the question, and that would be fine. If there is a query on what Mark has said.
It's not on what Mark has said, but it's to add a little bit of extra information. Let me ask the question, and if it's not appropriate, I will withdraw it straight away. My question, is that all right? Is that, Chairman? My question to Mark would be, how much in his estimate would that tree have grown in the 17 years that Mr. and Mrs. Page have lived there? In other words, how great was the issue when they first took up residence compared to what it is now? Is that appropriate, Chairman?
I don't think that it is going to cause any harm to ask that question. If Mark can answer that, if he can answer it, then Mark, please answer it.
I'm just trying to estimate the age of the tree. Looking at the photograph in front of me now, I should estimate it's got to be around 40 years old at the current time. They are relatively quick growing, so I should think it's probably doubled in size within the last 16 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Putton. Councillor Lawrence?
Thank you. Again, I will ask my question, and if you don't feel it's appropriate, I will withdraw it immediately. The agent referred to the dieback. I didn't hear in the officer's opinion. Did he see any dieback in the canopy of the tree, or in the limbs of the tree that could be considered? And if so, how severe was that?
The dieback I observed was mainly on the inner crown. It was the tertiary dead wood that I described in the statement. It appeared to be in areas where there was possibly overshadowing from the outer canopy, which is sort of a natural progress you get with trees of this species, as the outer canopy is, closer to the sun, and the inner canopy gets sort of suppressed. You get the dieback of the inner canopy. That was, the outer edges of the live growth tips appeared to be healthy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lawrence. Officer Matthews in the chat has asked if it would be acceptable to call the residents and ask how much the tree has grown. I don't think that that's of any major significance to making our decision, to be perfectly honest. So I think that we can continue without having to contact the residents if that's acceptable to the panel. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Officer Simmons. It's very much appreciated for the time that you've taken with us this morning. So we will now move on to procedural rule and number 7. And as I've said, there will be no cross-questioning of the officer in this case, and we've asked the questions that we want to. Procedural rule number 8. We have in attendance with us this morning Mr. Malcolm Alsop, who is a member of the Parish Council, and we will hear his presentation. Thank you, Mr. Alsop. If I could just ask you to please introduce yourself to the panel and advise us if you're a member of the Wroxham Parish Council, and if you could start your briefing now, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is Malcolm Alsop. I'm Vice Chairman of Wroxham Parish Council, and I'm here to speak on the Council's behalf. Wroxham Parish Council, having carefully considered this matter, would strongly urge you to reject this appeal and place the TPO on this tree. We entirely support the views of the BDC's Tree and Conservation Officer in assessing the health and status of this tree. We'd like to congratulate him on the thoroughness and fairness, we believe, of that report. This site has been visited by all 4 members of our Parish Council Planning Group, together with our councillor who is specifically responsible for trees and conservation in the village. Further, allowing the removal of the tree on the grounds stated by the appellant, we would like to point out, we consider to be in contravention of our neighbourhood plan policy, which has been adopted by BDC, our policy HBE4, which speaks to the need to enhance and not detract from the conservation area in the village. We believe that the felling of this tree would indeed be to the detriment of the conservation area. So we are, as a planning group and as our specialist tree councillor, we are unanimously of the view that the TPO should be placed upon the tree at 66 Charles Close and the appeal to be rejected. I think it might be helpful to the panel to provide a little context. The accompanying paperwork refers to 66 Charles Close as being in a conservation area, but it's more than that. It is in an Article 4 direction conservation area, which I'm sure you will be aware is the most stringent form of conservation area, and indeed has been named by BDC as the Charles Close Article 4 direction conservation area. I believe there are only 21 such areas in BDC's remit. So why is Charles Close accorded such status? Now, is it for the historical nature of the houses or their award-winning architecture, pleasant though they are? No, it is entirely because of the trees and the parkland setting. Behind me, you can see a picture of the avenue off which Charles Close runs, which is all part of the same parkland which has been built on in the last 50 years. It's worth pointing out that almost every one of the 90-odd properties in the road have a sizable tree in their front or back garden, and it is this very parkland setting that makes Charles Close so special, gives it its unique feeling, and which is why it's been awarded an Article 4 direction conservation area status. So to allow this appeal on the spurious grounds stated, in our opinion, will be to open the floodgates to anyone with a large tree in their garden to have it removed on what we might consider to be the flimsiest of grounds, and thus destroying the very concept of the conservation area. Mr. and Mrs. Page do seem to think that there are such things as trees that don't shed boughs or twigs or anything else. I'd just like to say that I'm not talking about something I know nothing about. I have 17 mature trees in my garden. Bits fall off them regularly. I have them attended to. I have tree surgeons work on it. And it is a privilege and a joy to have trees such as that as part of my and other people's properties. And it is the last thing in the world that we want to do, to destroy a tree, which would in fact destroy the very nature of the area which we all love. So to sum up, we urge you in the strongest possible terms to reject this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alsop. Okay, members, as I said previously, we won't have any cross-questioning of the parish representative, but can I just ask if there should be any questions that would significantly prevent the deliberation of the case? We will accept the questions at this time. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Alsop? Would you mind just unmuting yourselves and just advising?
Beg your pardon. No, thank you.
Just for the record.
Sorry, for the record, no, that was a very strong and clear presentation. Thank you, Malcolm. I have no further comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop, for taking the time to speak to us this morning. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on with the procedures, and I just need to note that we don't have any district councillors who are not members of the panel, or public who would wish to speak to say anything for or against the order in attendance. So we'll move on to procedure number 9. And in this case, it would normally be the closing statements from the objectors and from the officer. And in the case of fairness to everyone, we won't be having those closing statements this morning. And we will now move on to where the panel will go into private deliberation. So that means, Mr. Alsop and Officer Simmons, that we will have to put you into the waiting room. We will stop our recording and it won't go out live on YouTube while we deliberate. And then once we've made our decision, we will then call you back in again and advise you of that decision. Is that acceptable to you both?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
lovely. So our host will put